Welcome to Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. A world where coming in second place is not an option, but where principle-centered winning is the only approach.
Good morning and welcome back to this week's edition of Government Contracting Weekly. I'm Hilary Fordwich of KSI. On this morning's show, we're going to introduce you to Ann Altman, the General Manager of the Federal Division of IBM, who shares with us how IBM continues to innovate to serve their government customers. After Ann, you'll hear from Maurice DeFeo, a partner with the global law firm of Crowell and Mooring. Finally, I had a conversation with Richard Nathan, KSI's enormously experienced President and CEO. As always, there's a lot to cover, so let's get right to it. Good morning and welcome to our segment where we have with us a local leader this morning. I'm delighted to have with me Ann Altman. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Hilary.
Ann is the General Manager of the Federal Division of IBM, and she has recently been promoted into that role, so she's had an internal sort of accolade and also an external accolade. Ann's been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Institute of Sales and Business Development. So Ann, I'd love for you to share with our audience the internal role you have and what you've received now from the marketplace.
Oh, well, it's quite an honor to be recognized for a Lifetime Achievement Award. And honestly, I would say, Hilary, this is more about the people of this community than it is about Ann Altman. So I am very delighted to be the recipient, but really it's in recognition of the excellence in business and sales, business development and sales here in the Washington area for the federal government.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. You asked if my coming back really to Washington. I've recently been promoted to be the General Manager of IBM's Federal Division, but I've spent most of my career here in Washington. I actually grew up, I'm a native of the
whereabouts
area.
Exactly?
In Arlington, North
yes.
Arlington.
Okay.
And so my life has really been centered around public service and around the government. And recently our chairman, Ginny Rometty, she made a decision that said we want to move our most senior executives in front of clients, closer to clients where they're managing the P&L and they are managing the experience that we expect to deliver to our clients.
And I'm sure the clients like that because they really want a senior decision maker, somebody who can make a difference.
Exactly, exactly. So for me, what's been wonderful is the last 5 or 6 years I've been running global businesses for IBM. I ran the mainframe division and then I ran global public sector. So I have client relationships and a technology base that really is global that I now bring back to this community.
And that enriches the government experience, I would think, for IBM.
I hope it does. Yeah, I hope it does for our clients.
That's what they're intending to, yes.
Yes.
Recently, IBM's Smarter Planet initiatives have been gaining tremendous steam with the federal government. And if you could share with our audience, because they'd be interested in how IBM is doing, but of course our audience is always interested in the trends that might affect their companies, might give them opportunities also. So could you address it from the IBM perspective, but also the general market trends perspective?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Hilary. So when we introduced Smarter Planet several years ago.
And sorry, can you clarify for the audience also what Smarter Planet is, in case anyone doesn't know?
Yes, okay. So when we talk about Smarter Planet, IBM, what we've been talking about is the fact that the world has changed so dramatically, let's say in the last 10 years, where everything is instrumented. Today there are sensors in every possible thing.
Yes.
And as a result, information is coming from those and it has to be connected, it has to be digested, it has to be analyzed to be useful. But as a result, everything in society can change. You can have smarter transportation, you can have smarter buildings for energy management.
And homes, personally, professionally, commercially,
Totally.
residentially, yes.
So that was the intent, to say this world can be so much better.
Managed technologically.
Exactly. If we simply apply now with IT, the enablement that's necessary to make it a smarter world, a smarter planet.
So is the government looking at this from efficiency perspectives?
Certainly they are. For example, the GSA awarded a contract on smarter buildings, taking the 50 top most inefficient buildings and now instrumenting that in a way that they can manage, again, for an IT crowd, with a cloud-based accessing and pulling all that information, managing it centrally to improve the efficiency of the operation of those buildings. If they get that right for the top 50, imagine all the buildings, the thousands of buildings that the federal government manages.
And cost savings.
Absolutely.
So the taxpayer loves that as well. So our audience are taxpayers, we assume, as well as government contractors.
Absolutely.
So it's very beneficial. And so what is it that IBM's offering that's unique in this space?
Well, you probably know that IBM is not just a hardware company.
As it was historically.
And as I said, you know, I ran the crown jewel, the mainframe, right? But it was not just hardware. We have a tremendous software portfolio. In fact, we've acquired probably 30 analytics firms in the last few years.
Well, because IBM, there was a time when IBM was looked at as this is a company of the past, and you've really transitioned to be immensely profitable with the new economy.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. It's nice to hear somebody else say that versus us, but absolutely. And so we're that hardware, this incredible investment around software, and then our services capability, which is consulting and systems integration, and of course, a very deep research. So our research labs are all over the world, and we have thousands of our researchers focusing on things like applying technologies for mobile and social collaboration, for energy, for water. So it is all of that that comes together that IBM is now able to bring to our clients to affect this smarter planet conversation.
And that's what's in demand.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely.
Big data is a subject that we've heard a lot about from many of the people that we've interviewed, but it's particularly important for IBM. You're one of the leaders in that space. Can you tell us about what you're seeing that's happening with big data and, again, the opportunities for our audience?
Yeah, thank you. It's an extraordinary opportunity for your audience to think about. And the reason is big data, which sometimes is a scary notion, if you really think about all the data that has been produced, and for example, in the last 2 years, 90% of the data that exists in the world was created. Think about that.
Really?
Yes.
That I had not heard. That is interesting, yeah.
So the volume of data, whether it's because of video, because of, you know, our social collaboration tools, because of all the things that we are doing today and all the sensors and objects that are producing data, this is just an extraordinary opportunity to capture it, to understand it, to make sense of it. That's what is the opportunity for us. So now,
is that escalation continuing? So there's being more created. Do you see that continuing in terms of the same escalating pace?
Absolutely. And I
so
mean,
it's
that's
not like a catch-up of all the data that was originally out there.
No, just imagine all the things that are, all the data that is coming from satellites, from cell phones.
Being generated.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So when you think about big data, then that represents a huge, huge opportunity for discovery, for impact. In the government, the amount of data that will be produced in the next 2 years is the equivalent to 20 million file cabinets filled with text. If you could unlock all of that data, if you could bring it together, assimilate that, understand where the data synergies are, and be able to analyze that for impact for the mission, wow.
Yes, and being able to locate it expeditiously.
Absolutely. And to integrate that. So now, not just data that's sitting in computers, but real-time access to data that is streaming from various devices.
And then so for our audience, the opportunities, that's a situationally. What about the opportunities in terms of them teaming with IBM, projects that you look to, where you look for outside subcontractors with niche capabilities, perhaps?
Of course, of course. So if you think about then the application for an agency, and again, I think of this now as being the front office. Data and the enablement of big data is the mission, the front office for all of these agencies. So when you think about the Affordable Care Act and all the work that CMS is doing, then you would say, how do we integrate all of this data so that we can more rapidly determine eligibility for those that are so deserving.
And also this is particularly, you're talking just healthcare, let alone all the other agencies. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or if you were thinking about immigration services and the fact that today the majority of the processing is a paper-based process.
And that's why the INS takes so long too.
If you were able to then say, we are going to apply this technology so that we can analyze this and affirm the eligibility of individuals much faster, how powerful would that be for all
and
of
Patent
us?
and Trademark Office, because of course the critique there always is technology is so much faster than they're able to
Absolutely.
move.
Yeah.
Many applications.
So, and you think about all of the applications for the defense, for the intelligence world, where the amount of data that they are dealing with, and when they're really searching for that one needle in the haystack, this is about what we call now this era of cognitive computing.
So cognitive computing is beneficial to all technologically innovative companies because of the rapidity of the information to be assimilated.
For sure, for sure. And you know, when you think about cognitive computing, you're really saying we are able now, with all of this data, to predict an outcome.
It's the predictability which is going to matter. Yeah.
Yes.
As you know, Key Solutions is the force behind this show. Key Solutions provides strategy, capture and proposal support services to help government contractors win. So very much in the business of winning. We love to hear, what do you view, Anne, as the keys to winning? What are the keys for IBM's success?
Well, in the federal government market, one of the keys of success has been that we have been in the market for over 100 years. And so we have committed our research, we have committed our people throughout that time to the dedication of the mission of our government.
And the government knows that. And actually the expression, no one was ever fired for hiring IBM, that's about IBM.
Well,
yes.
I hope people feel that way because, you know, IBM has changed so much over that 100 years. I mean, the hallmark of IBM is our constant transformation and always looking to the future and understanding where we need to make investments to support our largest client in the world, which is the United States federal government.
And you historically, I guess it's, you know, success begets success. You've always been able to hire the best and the brightest because they want to go to IBM. So you're kind of lucky there.
Well, I think
the brand.
I hope that's the case. I think it is the case. The brand itself opens doors, but it's the people in IBM that really, I believe, set us apart. And it's the investment in our skills and the depth of relationships that we build over time.
Yes. What about red flags that you see? So that you've got the depths of relationships, you have your history and your brand. Are there red flags given that duration of history where IBM will say, no, we're just not going to go in that area? Or you may be in a space and you say it's time to get out. What sort of things do you look for, sort of red flags?
Well, that's interesting. And of course, that's the case. You can't be everything to everyone. You have to be selective. So there have been times when we've made significant investments and we've agreed that we can't be the prime contractor because we don't have the bona fides.
Yeah.
We don't have
the depth of those capabilities that are needed in that particular contract.
Space.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've made investments. Because we have such a deep technology base, we can bring capability that distinguishes another contractor and allows them to be more successful, allows us to showcase our capabilities and earn the trust and respect of our clients to do more.
Which is actually kind of unique because IBM is one of, I think, one of the fewer companies that's large and vast but has a good reputation of being a sub-2, which is pretty interesting, you know, for your size.
Yeah, well, you have to do both,
yes.
right? And if you don't, then if you're only a prime, that suggests that you really don't recognize the true value you can bring to the marketplace.
Well, but there are some large companies in this region that have reputations as being ghastly subs, that nobody wants to sub with them. So on a final note, for our audience, if you think about their opportunities to team with you. You mentioned earlier, yes, there are teaming opportunities. What should they do to be appealing for IBM? Bring, obviously, a particular technology, help you in a certain niche, but what else do you look for?
Well, we certainly look for their relationship with the client and the expertise and skills that they bring. We look for their bona fides, their past performance on contracts. And we look for assets, skills or assets that, that differentiate them, that also perhaps differentiate IBM.
So, to help you win as a team then?
Yes. So if it's a technology firm, then do they build off of a base of an IBM architecture, an IBM blueprint.
That would be a structure you could work together easily.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Anne, thank you so much for coming this morning, and thank you for sharing with our audience. And kudos to Anne for her Lifetime Achievement Award and your internal recognition.
Thank you so much, Hillary.
Good morning, and this morning I'm delighted to bring you a partner in the corporate group from Crowell & Mooring. That's Morris DeFeo. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Great, thank you. You can join us, Morris. And Morris is going to address for us some M&A issues, and I think for members of our audience, they're particularly concerned, Morris, what is going to happen in terms of the entire M&A market looking forward?
Well, as a corporate lawyer, we'd like to see the M&A market take off because that's good for our business, of course, but it's also good for the client's business. And I would tend to agree with most of the commentators that we've heard that in the government contracts environment, in particular, that not only sequestration but also reductions in government spending and other both micro and macroeconomic trends will probably lead to some degree of consolidation in the marketplace, and that of course means a pickup in mergers and acquisitions activity. It may be a market that is characterized more by anxiety than it is by opportunity, but one is often the flip side of the other. So I think that we're going to see, at least initially, a very much buyer-driven market where sellers are going to be responding to, in some cases, the need to
consolidate
and
consolidate, cut costs.
Exactly.
And what will that mean in terms of the due diligence, and particularly in terms of both the buyers and actually even for sellers, due diligence in the process?
Due diligence is not the sexiest aspect of doing mergers and acquisitions, but it's often where the deals are won or lost, both in terms of having a seller become very enamored of you, or rather buyer become very enamored of you or not. And it's always a critical aspect of any transaction. But in particular, I think what we're going to see is that companies that are eager to sell and participate in what we think will be a wave of consolidation are going to have to get their houses in order as far as diligence is concerned. The last thing that you ever want as a seller is to have a buyer find out a problem about you before you do.
So a trend in terms of this process and these negotiations would be the due diligence aspect, the focus there?
I think due diligence is always an issue, but I think we're going to see an increase in particular kinds of diligence in this market. Among the things that I think we'll see, for example, will be a great degree of emphasis being placed on information that will support valuation. So if you're a buyer coming into a market that's a consolidation-driven market, you're going to be very concerned about ensuring that whatever your valuation is going to stand up to scrutiny based on what the diligence yields. So you're going to be seeing a lot of folks looking, for example, at the certainty of contracting revenues and looking at individual contracts with the government to see if they're going to stand up to that kind of analysis. And then there's the legal diligence, which again is not everyone's favorite topic, but where again some significant issues can arise. And in particular in this market, what I would expect a buyer and its advisors to focus on will be issues such as potential successor liability for government contracting issues. So you want to know that the company that you're buying or the assets that you're buying are not going to come with a very unpleasant surprise in the form of contingent liability for government investigation or claim. And then also just the general issues of compliance, particularly legal compliance. Some of that will have to do with government contracting rules and regulations, but in this market, you're going to see a lot of neurosis associated with other regulatory areas. For example, the SEC recently has been placing a great deal of emphasis on cybersecurity. And so cybersecurity concerns are becoming more and more significant across all industries. We see in banks today, for example, increasingly concerned about it, and government contracting companies will as well.
Be affected. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming in this morning too.
It's a pleasure.
Welcome back to our Ask the Expert segment. This morning I'm delighted to have with me Richard Nathan. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Hillary.
And Richard is the President and CEO of Key Solutions, the force behind Government Contracting Weekly. Richard brings a very extensive background, a wealth of knowledge in this arena. Richard, can you summarize for our audience, what are some of the key highlights from your career?
Well, my degree's in chemistry, and I've been managing science, technology, organizations, companies since 1970. My basic experience has been in environment and energy, hard science, engineering, operations and maintenance. And I was a contractor for the first 30 of those years and have been a consultant only since the year 2000.
So you had experience on the other side,
yes,
which you can share in terms of things that you can see that you know are going to be winning and losing strategies.
Yes, yeah. I've done a lot of proposals for myself and my organizations, my companies, long before I became a consultant. So I've learned all the bad lessons, and since I've joined Key Solutions, I've learned how to do things right.
Because Richard has worked really on sort of both sides of the aisle as a contractor and now consulting and helping contractors win, he's seen really a lot on both sides. But there's some key lessons I know that you've seen, some good, some bad. I don't know which you'd like to start with, the good or the bad first, but could you share with our audience, what are some of the things that you look at that were critical in terms of things you've learned?
Well, I think one of the major things is never be anchored in the past. Now that goes for your personal life. It also goes doing business and writing proposals. So never be anchored in the past. And what I mean by that is one needs to have situational awareness, which means to learn from everything that happens to you. So some people are aware of what's going on, are constant sponges of information. Others tend to be oblivious to what's going on around them. And I encourage people to try to soak up all the information they can, whether it's by observation, by reading, by TV, by talking to people, by perusing the internet, whatever it might be, absorb information, and then integrate it. It's sort of a mental systems integration process. Take all the information and the insight that you've collected and put it together in new, meaningful ways.
So it's not your preconceived notions, you're learning constantly.
And that's exactly right, constant learning. I believe in lifelong learning. It also makes life more interesting.
Yes.
And then you can apply these lessons not only to your personal life, but also to running a business or doing proposals or capture or whatever.
So I guess the companies that come to you that are willing to learn are more likely to succeed too.
That's right. They need to think out of the box. And that's when you're a situational learner and you're constantly evolving your abilities, you tend to think out of the box and you can create better solutions for your clients. And I think this is more important. One thing I've observed over the years is that change is autocatalytic. The more things change, the more it causes future change to happen faster. And so you've got an upward rising curve.
That's evolve to a better place.
Well, sure.
We hope. Yes.
We hope. So that's really important. The other lesson I've learned, in fact, if you ask my kids, what's the one thing I keep telling them is, don't confuse what is with what you think should be. The should be is great, but you deal with reality. You deal with what is. And if you deal with what is rather than what you think it ought to be, you have a much higher likelihood of success.
So you're saying get reconciled quickly even if you don't like the current situation.
Precisely.
Yeah, and that's for a contractor too.
Absolutely, for a contractor. And it gets to things like offering to the government what they want as opposed to what you think they should want. It's also writing proposals with realistic solutions in mind, with realistic key personnel teams, with realistic past performance, realistic everything. Always have your mind focused on the reality of the situation.
Well, there's often that expression that we all remember where we were when Princess Diana passed away and also when Kennedy was shot. Most people remember their first proposal, and Richard certainly does, don't you, Richard?
Yes, yes, I do. It is very distinct. When I first knew you were going to ask that question, I thought it was going to be difficult to remember, but it came right to me. Back in the early 70s, I wrote my first proposal to Naval Air Systems Command. And it was to use a new technique called chemiluminescence to monitor the aging of jet fuel. And they were having problems with the longevity of JP5, and this was a technique to allow them to non-destructively test for impurities and longevity of the fuel. I knew nothing about proposals then, but as I think about it, I realized I had three things going for me, and somewhat serendipitous. Number one, I had a discriminator. It was a unique test. No one had ever applied to this before, and it filled an unmet need. The Navy was desperate for a way to do this, and I had a promising approach. And third, I priced it right. I wasn't greedy. I wanted the job. I priced it low, and I won.
And that's something that, as say, the test of time. That's always going to be consistent in terms of winning a contract.
Yeah, those are three important things to win. Fortunately, I can't take any credit for it. As I said, it was serendipitous. But once I got to AOC Key Solutions in 2000, I realized that there were some things I did very well as a youngster, and there are also a lot of things that I was totally naive about, and I learned a lot since in the last 10 years or so.
Thank you. We all know that there's a certain email comes in that we're not crazy about answering, or certain things that in some ways bug us or frustrate us. And so, Richard, maybe you share with our audience, what are some of the things that sort of bug you or frustrate you in this business?
Sometimes my clients frustrate me in this business. Now, I'm one who jumps into an engagement with both feet, and I really enjoy consulting with companies that do things right. And
you love to see them win, because you've run billions for clients. I know that's, you love to see them win.
In fact, that's one of the #1 job descriptions for Key Solutions. This has to be very competitive and really driven to win. And what frustrates me is when I see clients shooting themselves in the foot unnecessarily. Now, I can understand if an RFP comes out unexpectedly and perhaps they don't have their key personnel slate completed, or maybe their technical solution isn't fully complete or something like that. But they do the dumbest things to shoot themselves in the foot.
Without meaning to, just totally irreverently, yeah.
Generally, it has to do with being unprepared. So the proposal space isn't ready, the computers aren't hooked up, the logons aren't established.
And time is money for them, yeah?
Well, it's more than money. It's a matter of the clock is ticking on an RFP, and they can't start because they haven't gotten their infrastructure in place.
Operationally.
SharePoint isn't up. They haven't identified the proposal team members. They haven't identified or notified their subject matter experts who just happen to be on vacation the week they want them. You know, so there's all kinds of pre-planning. In fact, it's gotten so bad that we've prepared a proposal readiness review document that we can go in and do an audit for a company prior to a proposal and ensure that they're ready for the RFP when it hits. But I'm telling you, Hillary, nothing frustrates me more than a company that deserves to win.
Because they have everything else that would let them win. And
because they're the best company at the best price and have the best solution. And then they just destroy their chances through these silly oversights.
This morning, Ann Altman of IBM demonstrated that technology-driven changes never allow any of us to stand still. Morris DeFeo of Crowell and Mooring and Richard Nathan of KSI showed us that the vital role played by strong outside experts with years of experience are more valuable and more important than ever to the contracting community. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
You've been watching Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored each week by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. For additional information, comments, questions, or suggestions, please write us at governmentcontractingweekly.com.